Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt. Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, I hope the day finds you well because it's time to chill out with another magic historical opening. This time we're going to be doing Ice Age. And if you didn't know, Ice Age was originally supposed to be an improved version of Alpha. You see how it says Magic the Gathering here? Well, originally, how they were going to do it was going to say Magic Ice Age down here. And it was going to be a completely standalone set that used all the commons from Alpha, but brought in new uncommons and rares. Now, ultimately, that was all changed and scrapped, and they released it as an expansion instead. So you can see here, we've got old Quentin Hoover artwork from the Karplusan Yeti on the front. He does really great work. On the back, the old school packs still had the flavor blurb on them. So it says, it has been many centuries since the war between Urza and Mishra. The battered landscape has become a frozen desert, and the creatures of the world of Dominaria struggle for survival. One society has risen out of the cold chaos, defending itself against both the brutal forces of nature and the attacks of nomadic tribes that have emerged in the surrounding wastelands. And through it all, a twisted necromancer flourishes in the deep winter, intent on using his powers to keep the world dark and cold. You may have the skills to survive, but do you have the spirit to withstand the icy wilderness of Dominaria's Ice Age? Now, for me, this harkens back to the days where we were the main stars. We didn't have the Gatewatch to follow or anything like that. We were the main planeswalkers. So the way it is pitched to us is we're exploring the world, not follow the journey of other people, go there yourselves, which I really love. Now, let us dive in to the pack itself. Oh, we're starting out with Sol Devi Simulacrum. Now, this is a wonky card. 4 casting cost, right? It is an artifact that is 2/4. It's an artifact creature. It has cumulative upkeep of 1. And cumulative upkeep is an ability that was introduced specifically in Ice Age. And the idea is that it's an ever-increasing upkeep cost. And you can see that clearly with a card like this isn't very good, right? You're paying 4 mana for a 2/4. You pay 1 mana to give it +1/+0 until end of turn. But every turn, you have to pay 1 mana, then 2 mana, then 3 mana. And if you ever don't pay, you lose this guy, right? So it's a terrible card by today's standards. But I actually ended up using it for a while. It was never an all-star, but decent creatures were a lot harder to come by back in the day. And another thing you want to know about Ice Age is they were intentionally trying to slow the game down a bit. So I didn't realize that. I always felt Ice Age felt a little strange, but I didn't realize that was because they were intentionally trying to slow the speed of the game down. I always found the artwork for this card to be really striking because you have somebody who looks straight up like a human, but you can see one of his arms have been bashed off, crystalline fragments are flying everywhere, and there's this kind of underlying thing that's going on with Sol Dev and its artifact creations that lead to ruination, and the idea that they had made artifacts that really would be indistinguishable from regular people until they get injured is pretty impressive, right? This is a pretty solid artifact creature from that perspective. Moving on, we have Dreams of the Dead. 1 blue and 3 for an enchantment that says, basically 1 blue and 1, take target white or black creature from your graveyard, put it directly into play as though it were just summoned. That creature now requires an additional cumulative upkeep 2. If the creature leaves play, remove it from the game. Now, this is one of those cards that back in the day, everybody kind of panned. You went, meh, never really saw anybody trying to play it. But through the lens of today's cards, you can see that this is actually pretty potent, right? I mean, yes, it does install cumulative upkeep on each creature you bring back, but you can bring back any white or black creature from your graveyard for 2 mana, which will trigger any entering the battlefield effects, and when you let it go to the cumulative upkeep, would also trigger leaving the battlefield effects. And 2 mana to keep a creature around for a couple, like 2, then 4. You can keep a creature around for a couple of turns. This card is a lot stronger than I originally gave it credit for, and is a very interesting and weird idea too. Look at the artwork. You can see this like crazy tribal warrior who is holding like the skeleton of somebody who's passed on, and their spirit is flowing up out of it in this crazy way. Like, look at the way its head's tilted back. This doesn't look like a comfortable experience, right? This is an intense concept. And also, you have to admit, this doesn't feel like a blue concept, does it? The idea of being able to resurrect white or black creatures from your graveyard does not feel blue at all. Maybe the fact that it's like a dream of their spirit is where it works, but this is a sign of what they wanted to do with Ice Age was make allied colors actually feel better to play together. So up until this point in Magic, basically playing allied or enemy colors together, it didn't really matter. It only came into play when you were dealing with hoser cards, right? Moving on, we've got Pit Trap. So this is a 2 casting cost artifact, 2 mana, sack it to bury target attacking creature without flying that is attacking you. All right. So the word bury, if you're not familiar with it, super old school Magic wording. It specifically references regeneration. So if a creature gets buried, you can't regenerate it. And back in the day, honestly, I mean, yeah, we had cards like Plow and Terror or whatever, but this wasn't terrible. I remember running these and them actually being a half decent way of keeping your opponents, like creatures that didn't fly, off of you, right? And this set specifically tried to make flying creatures also feel a little more special and less generic too. So that is another reason that the Pit Trap works this way. But the flavor behind the Pit Trap is perfect, right? Like if you look at it, this is a great concept. The flavor text says, these traps are truly a symbol of great cruelty and sinister cunning. And us being shown the perspective of an individual who has just plummeted down into this pit, this is really dark. The only thing that ever messed me up about it was when you look at this Pit Trap, it's built out of like stone and everything else, so it really feels like you wouldn't have to sacrifice it. Do you know what I mean? Like it feels very reusable, but that's a minor quibble. After that, we've got, it's Orcish Librarian. 1 red and 1 for a 1/1 orc. Pay 1 red and tap them. Take the top 8 cards of your library. Remove 4 of them at random from the game. Put the remaining 4 on top of your library in any order. I had a buddy who insisted on trying to make this guy work. It never felt like it did. For me, eating 4 cards off the top of my deck was always too big a cost, combined with the putting the rest back randomly. But the artwork is hilarious. You have an orc who's literally eating books, and he's using paste as sauce. That is... like, who would summon this guy up to handle your books? He's just randomly eating them. I love it. All right, after that, we've got Kelsinko Ranger. I had this guy in a league once. We did him up like Buzz Lightyear. He was a space ranger. 1 white for a 1/1, and he has the ability, pay 1 white and 1, target green creature you control, or no, not even you control. Target green creature gains first strike until end of turn. I'm so used to like new school wording, right? Anyways, so you can give one of your green dudes first strike for 2 mana. Flavor text says, Rangers not trained by the elves just aren't the same. So the idea here is like these Rangers, they're aligned with green mana and everything like that. Not green mana, sorry, green creatures, because they've spent time training with them, which is a nice little flavor nod. And I like the artwork too, right? This Ranger is just a little 1/1, but he feels almost more effective because of the fact that he knows to hide from these orcs that are lumbering around in the background. And it also speaks to his like idea when it comes to tactics and stuff. And the fact that he has a bow also kind of ties into that elvish training. After that, we've got Flare. Oh, wow, man. You want to talk about terrible burn. 1 red and 2 for an instant that deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So these were originally designed as cantrips, right? Nowadays, people call them slow trips because cantrips, the way they work now, you get to draw a card when you cast the spell, right? Flare is wait until the next turn. That's super slow. The flavor text says, I strive for elegance and speed in my work. And that is Jaya Ballard, Task Mage. That's one we've actually seen more recently in Dominaria, finally getting an actual full-on Planeswalker card too, right? So this is, I mean, it's awful. This is not a good card, but the artwork is pretty striking. You know, it's like, it's not distinct in that you can't really see the features of these people, but this sort of featureless aspect works and creates an element of despair. I like it. After that, you've got Panic. I mean, the artwork, this guy looks like he's panicking. 1 red for an instant. Target creature can't block this turn. Cast only during combat before defense is chosen. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. This card does not need to have that line that says play only during combat. Playing this before combat would be perfectly fine, wouldn't change the card's functionality at all. Flavor Text says, if you'd been there, you would have run from that deer too. And that's a quote from Jaya Ballard. And it's like, all right, she apparently got terrified of a deer because somebody cast a panic spell on her, but isn't she a planeswalker? Or is it literally somebody else that she did it to? Either way, it's a fun little joking concept like, run from the deer. And honestly as well, the card ties together perfectly. In terms of flavor, it really does come together. 1 mana, you can see, you instill panic on somebody. What does it mean? It means they're too panicked to block. It's great. That is good design. It's not a good card, but it's good design. Bard's Sextant. 1 casting cost artifact, 1 tap and sack it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Play this ability as an interrupt. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. It's so funky to see cards that talk about interrupt speed because that is so old school, right? So, I mean, yeah, this is mana fixing. It's not going to get you ahead. It's going to get you mana, and then you're going to get to draw a card next turn. Ultimately, a very underwhelming card. Artwork is kind of funky, but meh, never cared for this card. Then we got Woolly Spider. Look at him. He wants to give you a little kiss. 2 green and 1. For a 2/3 spider, it can block creatures with flying, so it has reach. If it's assigned to block a creature with flying, it gets +0/+2 until end of turn. So it becomes even bigger than the giant spider, which was a 2/4 back in the day. Flavor Text says, we need not fear the forces of the air. I've yet to see a spider without an appetite. And that is Taveti of Kelsinko, an elvish hunter. Oh, cool! Kelsinko, just like the rangers we saw. Who knows? Taveti might have been someone who trained that ranger. And the artwork is straightforward. A spider that does have the vibe of being in icy terrain, right? It's got the camouflage that would fit in an Arctic vibe. After that, we've got Cooperation. Oh, I love it. This is so goofy and fun. 1 white and 2 for an enchant creature. It's funny. The old enchantments say target creature gains banning, but what this really says is enchanted creature has banning. The flavor text says, the elves train our healers, and we keep the orcs at bay. Most elvish bargains aren't as fair. You know what? I have to say, this pack has been doing a great job of doing the world building specifically between the white and green aligned cards. Starting out with the Kelsinko Ranger, letting you know that you have the elvish training, getting that mention here on the Woolly Spider as well, and then following it up with this concept talking about the elves training the healers and the orcs being kept at bay while orcs were in the background of the Kelsinko Ranger. I just love it. And then putting in the fact that most elvish bargains aren't as fair. There's that, like, they're working together, but there might be a little bit of, I don't know if I 100% trust you. And then the artwork is so fun because you see what really feels like a white aligned creature and a black aligned creature in Magic just happily getting along together. The Foglios do some really fun kind of artwork. Admittedly, it is on the goofier side like the Orcish Librarian, but it was part of the original Days of Magic and very distinctive, right? Man, this is some fun artwork. I just love the big goofy smiles. Like, yay! And this little evil guy with his little demon. Yay, we're friends. All right. Then we've got Tor Giant. Tor Giant is just straight up a functional reprint. Ice Age has a ton of reprints and a ton of functional reprints. They make up about 15 to 16% of the set, actually, overall. That would have been even higher if they hadn't changed things at the last minute. But Tor Giant is a 1 red and 3/3 vanilla giant that has flavor text that says, what do you do then? Run very fast. Don't stop until you see the camp or a bigger giant. And that's a quote from Toothlicker Harge, the Orcish captain. You see the giant, you just keep running until you see a bigger giant. And you see this artwork. Honestly, he doesn't, like, he's a giant, but this could just be a regular blacksmith. The way the artwork's done doesn't give him this giant impressive scale. I guess if you look at the trees in the background, but he just feels like he's too far away from it. So for me, this artwork has always just felt like a bald, unimpressed guy, you know? After that, we've got brown. Oof. 1 green for a 1/1. It has an activated ability of 1 green and 1 tap it. Counter target artifact ability requiring an activation cost. Play this ability as an interrupt. So this ties into green's ancient hatred of artifacts. The flavor text says, oofs love trinkets and love to take them apart. I only wish they wouldn't do so with the magical ones. So you got this situation where they're just running around the forest, taking apart the elves' magical gear. It's like, bro, can you just stop that? It's actually not a terrible card, really, especially for what you got back in the day. Being able to stop artifact activations wouldn't be unwelcome. Some people were wielding Sword of the Ages and other stuff you do not want have happening. Same with like Mirror Universe, right? So, cool little funky dude. Moving on. Oh, yeah! Mystic Remora! Now that is a sweet scorer. And you rhymed. So I rhymed, so I know it's true. All right, so Mystic Remora is 1 blue for an enchantment with a cumulative upkeep of 1. Whenever target opponent successfully casts a non-creature spell, you may draw a card. That player may pay 4 to counter this effect. So this is a card that has gained a ton of respect from people over time. The cumulative upkeep is annoying, but it really hoses your opponent. Every time they go to cast a non-creature spell, they basically have to pay 4 mana or you draw a card. So they either have to pay a ton of extra mana for stuff, they either have to slow down, or you get to draw a bunch of cards. This is a really solid card overall. And it's literally just a mystical fish. I summon the mystic fish. He don't like it when you don't summon up creatures. My fish only likes creature boy. You gotta pay otherwise. All right, let's move on. That's a sweet score. Oh, Kaljoran Dead. I loved these guys back in the day. I thought they were so impressive. 1 black for a 3/1. When it comes into play, sack a creature. 1 black mana, regenerate. If you don't know how regenerate works, you pay 1 black mana, and the next time this guy would die to a card that says destroy a creature, or the next time this guy would die to combat damage, that doesn't happen. And if it's damage, all the damage gets removed from this guy when he regenerates as well. So 1 black mana means you can use this as a blocker forever. It doesn't matter how many times they block it, you're going to be able to bring it back if they try and burn it. Like, you need cards that say bury, something like that, to get rid of the Kaljoran Dead. And like I said, things were slower and weaker back then. This actually felt like way above the curve for Ice Age, right? Like, imagine this thing in a draft. This is before the days of commons and uncommons being designed for draft and balanced that way. Imagine a draft where you had 4 or 5 copies of Kaljoran Dead. If you guys aren't aware of how things were back in the Ice Age days, we had a lot of landlocked board states where you'd sit there staring at your opponent across the table going, I can't punch through this. I can't do anything about what you have going on. And Ice Age specifically fed into that concept even further. But this is a super powerful concept overall for that day. And I like the fact that it's a 3/1 because there's literally like 3 skeletons. You're like, whatever, man. I got a squad of skeletons. They're going to hack you up. Now that leaves, I believe, 1 final card? Yep. It's the Circle Protection Green. So this is another instance of reprints. This cycle was originally in Alpha. They chose to keep it in Ice Age as well, redoing the artwork. The circles are like essentially OP, man. If you look at these cards, you go, this is bonkers. 1 white and 1 for an enchantment that says, pay 1 mana, prevent all damage against you from 1 green source. If a source deals damage to you more than once in a turn, you may pay 1 each time to prevent the damage. It's funny how it has to tell you that you can activate it multiple times if the source does damage to you. But basically, it's in current wording, it's prevent all damage that would be dealt to you from a green source. Pay 1 green, target, pay 1 color, 1 mana of any color, really. And then target green creature, spell, whatever, can't hurt you, can't deal damage to you. Now, my friend cheated with these when we first started playing. He put it a circle red, and then when I played a spell to destroy his land, a red spell to destroy his land, he's like, I'll pay 1 mana and use circle protection red to stop that. And I just accepted that because I trusted my friends at that point to read their cards and play them properly. My mistake, right? So, with that stupid bit of information, I went down to the local game store and they had a binder there with all of these singles in it. And picture little child Mike happily flipping through the binder, coming to the circle of protection and noticing these circles of protection are 10 cents each. And I literally said, quick, buy them all before he finds out there's a mistake. And I bought 4 of each of the circles. I bought 4 of every circle. And then I went home and I read the circles and I went, wait a minute! And then I picked up the phone and I called my friend. I'm like, you cheating sack of crap! You lied to me! That's not how this card works! He's like, it's not how it works. I'm like, oh, you didn't know. I got off the phone. And then I was just like, I mean, the circles were still good. Don't get me wrong. I built a deck with them. But for the rest of my life, whenever I went to that game shop, every once in a while for decades, the owner would tease me about it. Quick, get them before I find out there's a mistake, huh, buddy? And it's like, ah. So, Circle of Protections have a special place in my heart. And honestly, going back through this has been a lot of fun, man. I do love the old school Magic goodness. I mean, even the higher level cards are just not very good. Anyhow, thanks for coming by, my friends. Big shout out to my patrons, and I will see you all for the next video.